women founders benefit from the same content and programming and resources and networks that every other founder, which includes raising money, which includes connecting and, as you said, learning skills and tools and how things work. So that's available to everyone.
Hey, Nouhaila, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So we actually just this is our take two because our first try at this we got a technical issue. So we're gonna roll back right into what we were talking about, which is a little bit of your background. And the reason for that, I'll tie in some of the things that we mentioned previously that weren't recorded, but. Starting with your background as an immigrant, you mentioned you have a little experience as being a founder, and now that you're servicing founders. That's pretty important. Let's start with that. You're an immigrant from Morocco, and go ahead.
Yeah, I came from Morocco when I was 17 years old, and I actually started off as joining my first tech startup when I was around 23. And then after a couple of years, I joined the DMZ, mainly working with women entrepreneurs, but I also was involved with projects with entrepreneurs in general. In terms of the founder piece, actually, that came after, I wasn't a founder when I joined the DMZ. I started my own company a couple of years ago.
Gotcha. That's really cool. So let's talk about innovation and how you see it. What drew you to this industry?
So like initially, right from the beginning. Yeah. So again, I mentioned I studied political science, which has nothing to do with anything, what I'm doing. But the tech startup that I joined that initially really drew me is that they were doing solving some problems that I would have loved to solve that were actually, social and also involved kind of like global challenges. And so I think innovation is one of the best ways to solve complex problems that we weren't able to solve them in other ways. That's what really drew me to that.
Definitely. I think innovation has changed a lot, as we see it. Before it was seen as like, people working in a lab somewhere, developing the next Tylenol or like the vaccines, like it was like a heavy science kind of feel to it. Now it seems like anyone can just spin up a company and start working on problems that they really care about and learn about how to, how to position themselves, how to find a market, how to deploy, how to hire. Like all these resources are becoming more and more available. Do you think the future of work is entrepreneurship? Is it that everyone's going to start spinning up their own companies, or is it only for like a very few, special few?
Well, I'm biased, so obviously my answer is going to be yes. The future of work is entrepreneurship, and honestly, there isn't anyone I speak to that doesn't say I would love to start my own company, and that's an amazing thing. I love it personally.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the DMZ for a bit because DMZ has like grown spectacularly. It's become like the home brand name of like of incubators and accelerators in Canada. When you think about incubators, people think DMZ. It's almost become one and the same. Can you talk a little bit about the behind the scenes of that growth looks like?
Yeah, I think first of all, we work as a startup ourselves. We are a pretty lean team, and we've worked with hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurs. I think one of the things that may be part of like the secret sauce of the DMZ is putting founders first. Whatever it is we do, it's founders first, not companies, not growth founders specifically. And so we really go wherever they go, whatever problems they have, we try to solve those problems on every level. So I think, maybe that's really what's happening behind the scenes. And of course, what's happening around the world is also helping a lot. A lot of people around the world are realizing that entrepreneurship and innovation is really the solution to many, many things. And the DMZ has been doing that for a while. So also right place, right time, helps a lot. That's my perspective.
Yeah, it seems to me like the DMZ is always changing. I remember, I think it was like last year, the CEO announced that it's going to become like a more of an incubator and focus more on early stage companies. And it was very surprising, like something the size and the scale of DMZ with the amount of companies that deal with it, can just shift and pivot like that, almost like a startup, right? Like you mentioned. One of the interesting things about that is that it gives a little bit of degree of freedom when you're trying to decide where you're trying to go to, and you can be nimble and swift. How does it work? I feel like working in such an environment like that, where it's less of a corporate culture, more of a agile culture.
Yeah, no, it's definitely startup mode. So again, as I mentioned, we do work as a startup, and absolutely, even when the pandemic came, obviously that impacted so many people, and I personally was impressed by how swift. I think the tech community in general was very swift with that, because we could become virtual fairly quickly, rather than more than other industries. But I remember overnight we were home. Not only were we transitioning everything, but we were coming up with initiatives that helped address. So I remember the DMZ came up with Hack the Curve, like literally within days. And then now we're all trying to hack the curve, which is the pandemic curve, the flatten the curve. And that's just one of the many, many initiatives. Of course, there was also the Black Innovation Program, which was happening a while back, but then of course 2020 was a big year for that as well. Women Founders has been going on for years and years, but we needed to come up with a new structure, post-pandemic, especially that women were affected disproportionately, and so we needed to come up not only with new content and new programming, but the new format, right? So yeah, it is exciting.
Yeah, speaking of that, this stream for female founders. When was it established?
A while back. I know when I was when I came at the DMZ, there was the team had already done women founders initiatives before my time, and then when I joined, I also joined at a really great time where we were just kicking off a brand new initiative, and we doubled down our efforts there. And we've started off with the Dmz One Founders Accelerator, which was an incredible program that we ran for founders in Canada, which included a trip to the US. We successfully raised money in the US, attended the Female Founders Conference of Y Combinator, and also deployed some non-dilutive funding to the participating founders. But then again, it evolved so much, and what we have today is completely different from what we had 4 years ago when I just joined the DMZ.
Interesting. Random question. Is this meant for, so the definition of female and gender is kind of shifted now, right? Like, is it for people who identify as female? How does that selection process work?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we use the term woman because it is the person identifies as woman. We actually don't use the term female. It's irrelevant to us. What is relevant is if you identify as a woman, and that's it, and no questions asked. Yeah.
Interesting. Can you speak to the unique challenges female founders face?
Yes. So women founders face a number of challenges. Some challenges are universal to entrepreneurs in general, which include growing, selling, raising money, finding your product market fit. All those are incredible challenges that entrepreneurs face. Nothing unique about that. In terms of additional barriers women entrepreneurs face, they range, and it's really a mix of all of that creates this big barrier that women entrepreneurs face. I would start off with the funding, really. I mean, if we just look at the stats, it usually isn't more than, I think the last stat I read was 2.3% of VC money went to women founders, which is it's not very good, right? And there's a number of reasons for that that takes me, and it's actually worse for specific women founders, such as women founders of color, Black women founders. So those barriers are different for different women founders too. something else that I think is really, really important is also, the network. What's happening is actually the same capital goes to the same people, the same venture capitalists benefit from the same exits, reinvest in the same people, and that's it. And that's the circle. And you can imagine how many people are locked out of those networks. And so the idea is here, how can we break those closed circles and make them more diverse and more inclusive? So access to network becomes extremely important. Access to funders who are dedicated to investing in women founders become extremely important as well. And then, of course, there's like your and just your networks, your contacts is really important. As you know, network is your net worth, and access to resources. Better policies is also something. Better accommodations, like childcare, is really, really expensive, and you can imagine a parent entrepreneur having that additional barrier on them as well. So it's a number of factors, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a unique term that I came across recently that's really interesting, is that founders have to learn to productize their companies, not just a product, right? Like the idea being that being focused on just product or the service you deliver is one part of the struggle. The other part is learning how to make your company look attractive to investors and how to sell that. And oftentimes for new incumbents coming into that, like you focus on the product and service, what your customers buy, but you don't know there's a different mechanism or different lens that investors look at your company as, like the operational side, from how the engineering looks like to the sales and marketing to your finances and accounting, all these different unique skills that has to be learned by a founder when operating a company, not just delivering a product or service. And I think one of the unique challenges to that is people who don't have access to seeing how companies have run historically, or are having access to that kind of knowledge or the access to that education, have to compile that. And what's unique about programs like programs offered by the DMZ is that it kind of speeds up this delivery of this program, right? But each stream that's created by accelerative incubators are meant for different things. So one's like most things are like industry specific, right? Like hardware tech companies can go to a specific stream. I think it's healthcare tech companies can go to a particular stream, right? But when it comes to female founders and that being the stream where it's specific to the unique challenges coming out of there, is the programming any specifically different? Is it just more about the mentorship coming from more females that drives really the value there, or is that any kind of changes to the syllabus?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, as I mentioned, the barriers that entrepreneurs face, many of them are universal. Like fundraising is hard, period. Yeah. Selling is hard, period. You still have to make your unit economics work. You still have to make your CAC and LTV work. So that's why our most recent form of programming has actually been a stream of women founders programming within the core programming. And so we're not separating, we're not creating silos, because we don't want to isolate, people we're trying to help from the rest of everyone else. And so women founders benefit from the same content and programming and resources and networks that every other founder, which includes raising money, which includes connecting and, as you said, learning skills and tools and how things work. So that's available to everyone. And by participating in a Women Founders program, you're not opting out of the core program. Now, what we do is, because we recognize that there are additional barriers for to access networks that will, actually open doors for you to access funding. We have additional programming and additional support to level the playing field. And so what we'll do is, for example, we will have concentrated efforts in a concerted effort in bringing women in VC who are really laser focused on funding women. So that's one way of kind of bridging that gap, right? That 2.3% or whatever the stat is right now, and helping increasing it a little bit further.
How's since last year, especially last year, there's been an implosion of a lot of more programming, not just for female founders, but for minority founders. There seems to be a lot more push in our industry to equalize things by making things program specific. Do you feel like this has moved the needle? Do you feel that there are more female founders now, more minority founders out now? Do you feel like it's because of the support structure, or more feel motivated to kind of get out there because they're seeing more like-minded individuals out there?
Yeah, so I believe there are some stats out there that indicate that there's definitely an increase in women founders and women who start their own businesses. I think I can't remember the stat right from my head, but there is some data that backs that up. So that's good news. I think it really, yeah, to your point, it really does help to see people who look like you, in positions of leadership and in positions of having attained success. It really sends a message, consciously, unconsciously, that you belong here, right? And it really kind of it helps a lot. So I do agree with that, but still, there's a lot of work to be done. I mean, when you look at those numbers in terms of how much funding, that is it's really it's a terrible stat. So there's a lot of room for more improvement for sure.
In tech, this is a great story about how females were removed from the engineering process. Funny, weirdly enough, programming as an industry was created by women. Because initially, programming, coding, telling machines what to do, was seen like was a female's job, like almost like a secretary, and it was administrative, right? Handling machines in Industry 1.0, most of the coders were actually females, and even older than that, when machines were first being developed, the first way to code information was to string along like these beads of like magnetic coils, and it was actually female weavers, like tailors, who like would actually make these things that will actually be primitive code. That's why the code that was written for Apollo 11, all the Apollo missions going to the space by women, right up until the 80s, when personal computers started coming out, programming as a industry was all female led. But in the 80s, what changed was PCs came out and started being marketed as gaming tools for boys, and computers was a boys' tool. It no longer was it was like a unisex thing, like a calculator. And what ended up happening for this was it drove all this purchasing power towards, from like this tool that can use by anybody, computers, to, oh, this is meant for boys. It's a boy's toy. And by the time women were even able to touch a computer, it was usually generally around university or college. Men have been, by the 90s, were been playing with computers since they were 10 years old. So there suddenly became like a huge distance curve and in like how people interact with technology, and it's one of the main reasons why women were removed from the computer science industry and the world. It was mainly about marketing and how things were communicated. It was less to do about intelligence, less to do about how things changed or the demands of the workforce or even demands of lifestyle. It was just how things were marketed and delivered to people, right? So there's a huge push now to make sure things are like these ideas are taken into account, like how things are positioned, how things are delivered, who's it meant for, the target audiences. We're much more more calculated of this, but the damage kind of has been done in the computer science industry. Now catch up is being played, right? What do you think are like cultural things holding us back from having a more equitable society? Rather than just the gateways being held back, like, do you feel that there's cultural divides, especially as a minority female, that you feel that still exists?
Yeah, absolutely. I think well, first of all, culture is it changes based on geographic location, and also different groups and other factors like that. But in general, I think we can do a better job at, right off the bat, when little girls go to school, that they are being taught, and everyone else, not just little girls, that they have all these opportunities, and they don't need to be pursuing specific occupations or specific jobs. It's also, this is why allies are really, really important, right? It's not just women. We need to be including men into the conversation. We need to be including people who don't necessarily identify as women in the conversation to help move that forward. So one of the reasons the pandemic has actually disproportionately affected women is because more women took the back seat when it came to family responsibility and responsibilities at home. And so why is that? I believe a lot of it is really cultural and really just unspoken expectations. How can we fight that? How can we address that to make sure that women don't always take a bigger responsibility in kind of like these places outside the workplace? So that's an example of how we can work together to kind of create a culture and an environment that is conducive to women's leadership and growth.
Yeah. Definitely, a lot of things for us to work on and improve on as a little culturally. So moving forward about being a founder in today's climate and what the future holds. We were joking before about like entrepreneurship being the future of work, but I don't think that's actually a joke. Like, I think that is the way things are headed. More and more of everyday tasks are being taken over by automation and thinking tools, right? Just like physical jobs were taken away from factory level workers and automated away during during the 40s and 50s. We're now automating away a lot of like white collar jobs. A lot of thinking, jobs that require a lot of thought. So what's next for humans to do is things that are is building systems, right? Building scalable systems, building problems building larger entities that can solve problems, aka companies. It used to be that to make a company, a publicly traded company, you need a sophisticated team to do that. You need like an executive team with MBAs. You need like a lot of cash to be taken up. It used to be a lot harder to make like to scale a company, but now it seems like everybody is launching businesses that are getting capital, getting scaling upwards, getting the product being actually bought up. It's less to do about the individual team and the knowledge base it has, but more about the ideas being delivered and the mechanism being utilized. It's a more of a system that everyday people can do that. Like we see high school students and middle school students entering pitch competitions. I think there are about like 300 millionaires under the age of 14 in North America right now. Creating. Yeah, so creating Fortnite skins, YouTube videos, doing all these things. Like there's the barrier to entry into high commerce and into the innovation landscape has decreased, right? What are you seeing from that point of perspective? Are you seeing like people from different backgrounds enter the space, like especially into your intake programs? Now that things are more virtual, are like more people applying to your programs? Do you have a more wider radius of applications coming in?
Well, definitely. Well, there's definitely more global applications coming in because now we're remote completely. There are more. You know what? When we run programs that are targeted to help specific individuals overcome specific barriers that they face uniquely, we see more applications from there. So this is why I think these programs work. When we started doing women entrepreneurs programs, we've seen an increase in women entrepreneur applications. I don't run the Black Innovation Fellowships, I can't speak specific numbers, but I do believe that when we ran, I've witnessed a change of a much larger number of applications from Black founders when we started running the Black Innovation programs. So absolutely, when you lower barriers for specific groups, they take advantage of them because, again, as I mentioned, we're not, we're not. These people are as capable as everyone else. It's just a matter of bringing the resources to them. In terms of what you said about the barrier being a little bit lower in terms of entering. You are right. It is more accessible. You can start an e-commerce business, ASAP. But again, it is the unconscious and the kind of informal rules that work in our society that can actually kind of dictate whether specific groups can enter or not, right? Like, for example, responsibilities at home, those are informal rules. Or, for example, access to capital, access to loans. There's data out there that show that people don't have equal access to loans. And all of these are, again, contributing to the success of your business. So even if, yes, you are right, you can start a business, you can argue you can start a business tomorrow. There's absolutely, especially the barriers that you can't really see with your eyes are the ones that are dictating and orchestrating the entire scene. So you have to be really careful with that, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Can you share some insights? Can you talk about a few companies that have gone through the program, and any challenges they've overcome? Any highlights that you see?
Sure. So, I mean, there are so many success stories. But let me one story I've told a couple times, and it was from our Women Founders Accelerator program that we ran a couple of years ago. And I showed that because it's been a couple of years, so we can actually see retrospectively the kind of the impact. Is a company called Ratio City, which is in real estate tech. Monica was an architect, and she joined the DMZ with really it was an idea or a prototype. It was just a prototype, and with her co-founder through the Women Founders programs. And after 4 months, during those 4 months of the program, we've done a number of things from, helping Monica kind of finalize her MVP to helping her secure her first clients. It was really because of the Women Founders kind of trip to the United States where we were able to meet investors that later on invested, meet customers. And Monica and Ratio City went through the entire kind of like period at the DMZ, from Women Founders, incubation period, acceleration period. By the time they had graduated, they had already raised $1 million. They were making monthly recurring revenue that was healthy, and also I think they were like 15 people full time by the end of the DMZ, and that was like an incredible success story to see.
Wow.
Yeah. And of course, not every founder will. Sometimes we accelerate your failure too, which is fine, because then you can move on to something else. But we have seen, like, it's so incredible. I love, when I work with a founder and then I meet them a few months later or a year later or something, and then they're like, and they were just an idea or a prototype or MVP, and now they've raised this much money. They're making this much. They've grown. It's just an incredible feeling. It shows this is working, right?
I found that some of the best programs, go back and forth between this dichotomy, right? One being like a supervisor cracking the whip, and a therapist holding the hand, right? Where in one point of view, you're putting up, hey, this is your milepost, these are your goals, this is what you should be hitting. Either you set them or help them hit them, and then hold them accountable to those goals. And the other side is like you pretty much hold their hand while things are going south, and make them feel good. And a lot of programs are actually go in the extreme. We know some programs that are like set like crazy milestones, and you hit them, amazing. They're gonna help you so much get capital and move forward. But if you don't, you're just you'll be dropped from the program raised, right? And good, better luck next time. And the other programs are much more. It's okay. Like, it's a more long-term game. You'll get better, and more the therapist role. And then, somewhere in that extreme, where do you find your program stream? Do you find it follows more of a therapist role set, or is it more about the whip? Like, hey, your goals are out here. You gotta get it. You gotta get there.
I think it's good to have a healthy dose of both. Like a kick in the butt and the pat on the back at the same time. So it's hard to tell, actually. So, and you know what? Post pandemic, because we have introduced a number of stages for founders. We had those stages before, but I think we have more stages now, which allow for more people who fall short of a specific criterion to be supported in another form of program, which is why the Women Founders program is actually a 4-stage program. We only had 1-stage program. 4-stage program, so Founders Launchpad is you actually just have an idea, you're aspiring, and there's a number of content that you can consume, and you get networking. There's the boot camp, which is you have a prototype, and you are building that prototype, where you're refining it. And then we have a bridge, and the bridge is to help refine your product market, try to get to product market fit. And then you have the incubator. And so by having those different stages, we are trying to make the program as accessible as possible while not compromising the actual quality and the time that you get. Because at the same time, programs cannot be general. They have to be super customized. So you have to really find kind of like a really good, you can't compromise that part. That is just non-negotiable.
Cool. Just like gun to your head, what would be like one favorite company that came through and you were like, wow, these guys are doing some amazing things?
Okay, I don't have favorite, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was a trick question. That could have got you in trouble.
Yeah. They're all... There's companies where you personally feel passionate about just because for whatever reason it's personal to you or you have an area of expertise, but there's no favorite. Sorry.
Fair enough. What would you advise a female founder? Why should they choose if they're looking between a female specific stream like your program versus a non-specific stream? What would you recommend and why?
So sorry, can you reframe that? You mean
if they're looking for an accelerator program, right? Do you feel that for a female founder, would it be better to have a female specific program that they go through, or would it be a general program? Is there a pros and cons to the two? Do you have a preference that they should should that be a deciding factor between programs?
Well, that's a good question. Although if I thought it was better for women to just go through a general program, then we wouldn't have any women founders programming. But that's a good question, though, because that's why we don't want women to miss out on the general programming. And so instead, what we've done is you don't have to choose. If you, you can choose if you want to opt into Women Founders or not. But if you choose to opt in, it's a decision that's up to you. You will still benefit from the core programming. So you're not missing out on anything. You're getting additional customized support that is not really taking away from your time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's completely up to the founder, though. When we just say we don't assume. First of all, we don't assume people are women, and we definitely don't automatically put women founders into the women founders. We always say we have this. By the way, anyone who identifies can opt in, and it's up to you. We've had women founders who don't opt in, and that's totally fine.
Yeah. So going back to this idea that everyone should be founders or everyone should look into entrepreneurship, I think about 10% of the population are naturally entrepreneurs. They're risk takers. They want to do something scalable. Entrepreneurship doesn't come naturally for everybody. Just like art doesn't come naturally for everybody, or science, or physical activity, right? How do we encourage more entrepreneurship? Especially for females, right? Like, how do we encourage those who are thinking about entrepreneurship or those considering it to pursue it? Do we remove risks? Do we risk it? Do we create more of a culture of acceptance?
So I'm going to challenge you actually a bit. I don't know what you mean by some people are naturally good at this. I do believe in strengths and weaknesses,
Mhm.
but I haven't, like, I've heard this before, but I'm not convinced that you're either an entrepreneur or you aren't. I think that there are strengths and weaknesses, and that's why diversity is important, because when you have a team that bring in different strengths, and that complement other people's weaknesses, you get something magic happen. And then when there's founder market fit, so there's a passion for the specific problem they're solving, and they're very, they're really, they don't give up. That's where the magic happens. So for me, the way I look at it is not, are you an entrepreneur or not? It's like, do you have the resources or not? Do you have, do you have the passion for that specific problem? And then do you have the resources? And sometimes you will have barriers because of where you're from or how you look. And that's something that we combat. But then, of course, we can't do the work for you. It's really the grit, I think, is really the universal trait of someone, and when you have all these barriers, sometimes people get overwhelmed, right? So that's really what my take on it, but of course I'm sure people disagree with me.
No, that's actually really interesting because that's always been a debate, right? It's entrepreneurships. Is it a given talent or is it that's developed? Can anybody do it or not? Are you an entrepreneur or not? That's actually been a debate. So that's interesting. You take that kind of spectrum approach. Cool. Let's move on to actions, right? Like if someone viewing this wants to join the program, what are things they should consider, and how can they apply?
Yeah, I think so. There are many. There are four stages to the program, as I mentioned. The newest one is that we launched is the Women Founders Launchpad, which we thought we will do something very different. We want to do the format, want it to be different. We want the content to be different and the contributors to be different. So what we thought is we're actually going to launch an online platform for women founders by women founders. So we don't have people preaching something they haven't done. It's really a woman founder who has found success in part of her journey, and who's sharing that and the challenges she faced in bits and pieces of content. And so, for example, I mentioned Ratio City. Monica, she's in there. She contributed how exactly she raised her million, how she got to specific, monthly recurring revenue. And so founders can benefit from that content and at their own pace. It's online, it's accessible. So we're hoping to address those other barriers by making it as such. And then also we have monthly events only for Launchpad founders. So we're really building a strong community of leading women tech founders to discuss specific topics, get help, and receive help. So how they can sign up for that is they can go to our website, which I'm sure you'll have linked somewhere, Ravi, and they can sign up. It's called the Women Founders Launchpad, and you'll also join our Slack community through there. And then, of course, if you already have like a prototype, you can join the Launchpad too. But you can apply to other programs, whether it's the Bootcamp, Fast Track, or Incubator. You'll see the different stages, and you can apply to whichever one you feel is best fit for you.
Cool. Being a founder yourself now, right? Could you speak on the challenges there? Can you Can you shout out your company first of all? What are you working
Yeah,
on?
yeah. So 2 years ago, I started my own company called Scale Without Borders, which is a platform for newcomers in tech. So helping specifically newcomer tech talent access resources they need. Of course, as an immigrant newcomer myself, I felt there was a gap there to help newcomers access the resources. So the challenges that I've faced specifically have been around uh, finding so first of all, finding the right people, and I think I've leveraged sort of like my own network to help with that. And then I think one thing is really and that's one thing is really important as well, is figuring out your business model and finding your product market fit. There's no way around that. You have to go through that. But I do think I've been very passionate about what I'm doing. So that has helped a lot. And really, again, perseverance is you get to specific milestones based on, how much grit you have. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now. And anything I learn, I share with founders, and anything I learn from other founders, and vice versa.
Amazing. Nouhaila, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for your time. This has been great. I feel like I learned a lot. The program you're running is tremendous. DMZ, of course, keeps bringing Canada's greatest talent together. I love to see the more founders that come through the program. And again, thank you so much for coming here and sharing your insights.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been fun being here too.
Perfect. And for everyone who listen in, thank you. And check out the DMZ Founders Program, Women Founders Program.